When Jesus showed me what happens in the last 3 seconds of every person's life, I understood that heaven and hell are not destinations we arrive at, but choices we make in a single, final moment. What I saw has left me shaken forever. My name is Claire Evans. I'm 45 years old, and on April 12th, 2025, a sudden brain aneurysm caused me to die on my kitchen floor, and I met Jesus. Up until that day, my life was, normal. I lived in a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina, with my husband, Mark, and our 2 teenage kids. I worked part-time as a dental hygienist. I volunteered for the school's booster club. I paid my taxes, kept a clean house, and tried my best to be a good person. We went to church, not every single Sunday, but definitely on Christmas and Easter. We believed in God. We taught our kids to say their prayers at night. From the outside, and even from the inside, I thought we were doing okay. I thought being a good person, a decent neighbor, a loving mom, I thought that was the goal. I had no idea how wrong I was. That morning started like any other. The kids were off to school. Mark was at work. I was standing at the kitchen counter, making a grocery list, when the headache hit. It wasn't a normal headache. It was like a lightning strike inside my skull. The pain was blinding, and I remember grabbing the edge of the counter, my knees buckling. The last thing I saw was our family photo on the fridge, all of us smiling on vacation last summer. Then, absolute blackness. But the darkness didn't last. It was replaced by, well, there aren't words for it. It was light, but it was more than light. It was alive. It was pure, unconditional love, a peace so profound that every worry, every fear, every insecurity I had ever carried in my 45 years just dissolved into nothing. I felt more myself than I had ever felt on earth. I was weightless, free. And then I saw him. He walked toward me out of the center of the light, and I knew instantly who he was. This wasn't the Jesus from the paintings in church. He was real, powerful, radiating an authority that was both terrifying and incredibly comforting. His eyes, they saw everything. Not just what I did, but why I did it. Every hidden thought, every selfish motive, every moment of pride. And yet, the love in those eyes was so overwhelming that I felt no shame, only a deep, gut-wrenching understanding of how much I needed him. I fell to my knees, though I didn't seem to have knees. It was more like my entire being just bowed before him. Lord, I whispered, and the word felt totally inadequate. He reached out and gently lifted my chin. His touch was like warmth and life itself flowing into me. Claire, he said, and his voice was the sound of 1,000 waterfalls and a gentle whisper all at once. Peace. You are home. Tears I didn't know I could cry streamed down my face. I thought, asterisk, this is it. I made it. My good life was enough, asterisk, but then his expression grew serious, filled with a divine sorrow that broke my heart. You lived a good life, he said, as if reading my thoughts. You were kind, you were loving, but many good people are lost because they do not understand what happens at the very end. I need to show you something. The beautiful, peaceful light around us began to shift. The feeling of being home was replaced by a sense of immense, cosmic importance, like I was about to witness a fundamental truth of the universe. I am going to show you the final 3 seconds, Jesus said, his voice echoing with eternal weight. This is the moment that defines eternity for every soul ever created. The scene dissolved around me. I was no longer in that place of personal, peaceful light. Instead, I was standing with Jesus in what felt like the control room of the universe. Below us, I saw the earth, a beautiful blue and white marble suspended in the velvet blackness of space. But as I looked closer, I saw millions, no, billions of tiny lights flickering across its surface. Some were bright, some were dim. Every light is a soul, Jesus explained, his arms sweeping across the vista. And every day, thousands of them are called home. Watch. He directed my gaze, and I zoomed in, not on one place, but on everywhere at once. I was seeing through time and space. I saw an old woman dying peacefully in a hospital bed, surrounded by her family. I saw a young man in a horrific car crash, his life cut short in an instant. I saw a soldier on a battlefield, a baby taking its last breath, a businessman having a heart attack, in a boardroom. It was overwhelming, a global symphony of life's final moments. In the physical world, their deaths may seem slow or instantaneous, Jesus said, his voice cutting through the chaos. But in the spiritual realm, every soul is granted a final moment of perfect clarity, 3 seconds outside of earthly time, where their eternity is sealed by their own choice. My focus was then drawn to one soul, a very old man, dying alone in a nursing home. I could see the flicker of his life fading. As the last connection to his earthly body was severed, a new reality opened for him. The first second, Jesus said, and I experienced it with the man. Instantly, his entire 92-year-old life unfolded before him. But it wasn't like a movie. He was living it, but with a divine understanding. He saw every person he had ever interacted with, and he felt the exact impact of his words and actions on them. He felt the joy he gave his wife when he brought her flowers for no reason. He felt the sting of humiliation his son felt when he criticized him in front of his friends. He saw every selfish decision, every act of pride, every missed opportunity to show love. He also saw every moment of kindness, every quiet prayer, every small sacrifice. There was no judgment from an outside source. The judgment was in the perfect clarity of the truth itself. For the first time, he saw himself not as he thought he was, but as he truly was, a flawed, broken man who had both loved and hurt, who had both succeeded and failed, and who was desperately in need of a grace he did not deserve. It was a moment of complete ego death, a stripping away of all self-justification. In this second, Jesus clarified, every soul understands their sin, not as a list of broken rules, but as a falling short of the love they were created to give and receive. Every soul understands their need for a savior. Then came the second moment. The second, Jesus announced. The panoramic review of the man's life vanished. Now he was standing in a quiet space, and Jesus was there before him. It was the same Jesus I was standing with, radiating that same perfect love and holiness. He looked at the old man with eyes full of compassion and forgiveness. He held out his hand, a hand that bore the scar of a nail. He didn't speak with words, but with a communication that went straight to the soul. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I paid for all of it. The hurt, the sin, the pride. It is finished. Just take my hand. Come home. The offer was unmistakable. It wasn't confusing or vague. It was the clearest, most important invitation he had ever received. Grace was being offered freely, a complete pardon for a life of imperfection. I could feel the old man's soul trembling. He saw the filth of his sin, and he saw the perfect holiness of Jesus, and he was being offered a bridge across the impossible chasm. Every soul is given this chance, Jesus told me, his gaze sweeping across the millions of dying lights, from the devout believer to the hardened atheist, from the innocent child to the cruelest dictator. I present myself to every single one. I fulfilled my promise. I stand at the door and knock. My heart was pounding. I had seen the problem in the first second and the solution in the second. Then Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with a divine urgency. But the third second, he said, his voice dropping to a solemn, powerful tone, is not mine. It is theirs. The third second arrived, and for the old man, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated will. Everything, his past, his regrets, his few joys, the divine offer of grace, was held in the balance. I watched, breathless, as his soul, transparent with understanding, made its choice. With a sense of overwhelming gratitude and relief, he reached out and took the hand of Jesus. The moment his spiritual hand touched the Lord's, a wave of brilliant, cleansing light washed through him. Every stain, every scar, every memory of sin and shame from his 92 years was instantly gone, utterly annihilated by grace. The weary, broken spirit of the old man was transformed into something radiant, youthful, and whole. A cry of pure joy escaped him, and I watched as Jesus smiled and drew him into an embrace, welcoming him into paradise. He chose life, Jesus said to me. But then, he showed me another soul, a woman in her 50s. On earth, she had been a powerful CEO, respected, wealthy, and a philanthropist. She was, by all societal standards, an incredibly good person. She had died suddenly of a stroke. I watched her for a second. She saw her life, the business deals, the charities she funded, the people she employed. But she also saw it with divine clarity. She saw that her charity was often motivated by a desire for public praise and tax benefits. She saw how she treated her employees as assets, not as people. She saw how her relentless ambition had fractured her family. She saw a lifetime of self-reliance, a deep-seated pride in her own accomplishments and her own goodness. She saw clearly that she had built her own kingdom and had no room for God in it. The need for a savior was laid bare before her. Then came the second. Jesus stood before her, just as he had for the old man, his hand outstretched. The same offer of perfect, unearned grace was extended to her. I am the answer to the emptiness you always felt. I am the grace that covers the pride you just witnessed. Take my hand. Come home. Now the third second. I felt the struggle within her soul. I could feel her pride warring against the truth. It was a lifetime of momentum, a habit of being her own God. Her soul recoiled from the idea of admitting she needed saving. My life was good, I could feel her thinking. My donations, my work, my reputation, surely that is enough. I don't need a handout. With a final, defiant act of will, she turned away from Jesus. She rejected his outstretched hand. The instant the choice was made, the consequences were absolute. There was no angry judgment from Jesus. He simply looked on with profound sorrow. But the woman, having rejected the source of all light and love, could no longer bear to be in his presence. The light became painful to her. The holiness became unbearable. She wasn't cast out, she fled. She chose the darkness. I watched in horror as her form, once vibrant, was instantly consumed by a creeping, spiritual blackness. Her look of proud defiance twisted into one of unimaginable terror as she realized the finality of her decision. She plummeted downward, away from the light, into an abyss of her own choosing, screaming in silent, spiritual agony. I turned to Jesus, horrified. She was a good person. She did so much good. Claire, Jesus said, his voice gentle but firm. Good works that come from a heart of pride are like beautiful, polished stones laid on a foundation of sand. Her entire life was practice. She spent 50 years practicing self-reliance and rejecting her need for me. Her heart was so hardened by her own goodness that she could not accept the free gift of grace when it was offered. The old man, for all his flaws, lived a life of quiet humility. He knew he was not enough. He spent his life practicing the need for something greater than himself. His heart was soft and ready to receive. He showed me more. I saw a violent criminal who, in his final 3 seconds, saw the horror of his life and wept in brokenness, grabbing for the hand of Jesus like a drowning man grabbing a rope. He was instantly saved. I saw a beloved pastor, praised by thousands, who in his final moment rejected Jesus, trusting in his own ministry and reputation to save him. He was lost. This is the great deception, Jesus warned, his eyes burning with intensity. Satan does not care if you are a good person. He only cares that you are a proud person. He wants you to trust in your own morality, your own religion, your own kindness, so that in your final 3 seconds, you will reject mine. Your life on earth is not a test to see if you can be good enough to earn heaven. It is the training ground to soften your heart enough to accept heaven as a gift. I finally understood. Our lives are the practice for that one final, eternal choice. Every act of pride hardens our heart. Every act of humility softens it. As this profound truth settled into my soul, I felt a familiar, physical sensation. A pulling. It was like a rope was tied around my spirit, tugging me back, away from Jesus, away from this place of ultimate reality. No, I cried out. I don't want to go back. I want to stay with you. Jesus placed his hands on my shoulders, and his incredible peace flowed through me one last time. Your work is not done, Claire. You have seen the truth of the final 3 seconds. Now you must go back and warn them. Tell them to practice humility. Tell them to practice forgiveness. Tell them to practice acknowledging their need for me every single day. Tell them their eternal life depends not on the last 3 seconds alone, but on how their entire life prepares them for it. The pulling grew stronger, and the vision of Jesus began to fade. His last words echoed in my spirit as I was violently yanked back into the world. The feeling was like being thrown into a freezing, jagged pit after floating in a warm, perfect ocean. An explosion of pain erupted in my head. I gasped, a raw, desperate intake of air, and my eyes flew open. I wasn't in my kitchen. I was in an ambulance, the siren screaming overhead. A paramedic was shouting my name, his face a mask of concentration. I could feel a tube down my throat and the sting of N4 in my arm. The world was a blur of harsh lights, loud noises, and agonizing pain. But worse than the pain was the absence of his peace. The contrast was so stark, so brutal, that I began to sob, a broken, guttural cry for the home I had just been torn from. "She's conscious. We've got her back," someone yelled. My husband Mark was there, his face pale and tear-streaked, gripping my hand. "Claire. Oh, thank God, Claire." My first words were not for him. They were for everyone. I clawed at the mask on my face, my voice a hoarse croak. 3 seconds, I rasped. "You only get 3 seconds." The medical team exchanged worried glances, likely thinking I was delirious from the brain trauma. But I didn't care. The urgency of the message was a fire in my soul. My recovery was what the doctors called a complete miracle. They couldn't explain how I survived a ruptured aneurysm of that magnitude with no significant long-term damage. But the physical healing was nothing compared to the spiritual earthquake that had leveled my life. The person who woke up in that hospital bed was not the same one who had collapsed on the kitchen floor. The good, comfortable, suburban woman was gone. In her place was a witness, a messenger with a burning, non-negotiable mission. I tried to explain what I saw to Mark, to my children, to the pastor who came to visit. Some listened with tears in their eyes, their hearts open. Others, they patted my hand and said I'd been through a traumatic experience, that the mind does strange things. They couldn't grasp the reality of it. They couldn't understand that their own pride, their own reliance on being good people, was the very thing Jesus warned me about. But I will not stop talking. I will spend every remaining second of my life fulfilling my promise to him. I am telling you this story now because you need to know. You need to understand that your life, right now, is your practice. If you are living a life of pride, convinced that you are a good person and that your good deeds will be enough, you are practicing for a no. You are hardening your heart, making it nearly impossible to accept the free gift of grace in that final, crucial moment. Your goodness is becoming your God, and it will fail you. But if you live a life of humility, if you can admit you're broken, if you can forgive those who have wronged you, if you can ask for forgiveness when you are wrong, if you can simply look up and say, "God, I can't do this on my own, I need you," then you are practicing for a yes. You are softening your heart, preparing it to joyfully and gratefully take his hand when the time comes. Don't wait for your last 3 seconds. The training is now. The choice is being prepared for with every breath you take. Choose humility. Choose love. Choose to see your own need for a savior, so that when he stands before you and offers you everything, your soul will be ready to say yes.